Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I couldn't believe my eyes when I pulled up to the vacant lot I owned on Elm Street. There was now a tacky-looking garden shed on it. I blinked a few times, thinking maybe I was seeing things, but nope. That ugly green shed was still there. This lot had been vacant for years. I inherited it from my grandfather and never did anything with it besides mow the grass every now and then. And now some random person had the audacity to build a shed on my property without permission. I parked my car and marched over to the shed. That's when I noticed the sign out front that read, Karen's Garden Shed, in obnoxious, bubbly letters. Who was this Karen person and what gave her the right to build on my land? Just then, a middle-aged blonde woman came walking up the driveway. "Excuse me, can I help you?" she asked in a snooty voice. "Yeah, you can help me by explaining what you think you're doing building this shed on my property," I replied angrily. The woman looked offended. "Well, this is my shed. I'm Karen, and I've been using this lot for my gardening for over a year now. I have squatter's rights to this land." I stared at her in disbelief. "Squatter's rights? Are you kidding me? This is my family's land. I have the deed to prove it." Karen dismissed me with a wave of her hand. Yes, well, I've been maintaining this property and have established residency here. That gives me legal rights." I couldn't believe the audacity of this woman. She was basically trying to steal land that she had no claim to. "Listen, Karen, or whatever your name is, I want you in this shed gone by the end of the day, or I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing," I said firmly. Karen's friendly demeanor changed instantly. She put her hands on her hips and got right in my face. "Now you listen here, young man. I have over $5,000 invested in this shed and all my gardening equipment. You have no right to threaten me. I know my legal rights. Now good day." And with that, she stormed off. I stood there absolutely stunned. Who did this middle-aged busybody think she was? There was no way I was backing down, that she'd had to go. I went home and immediately called my lawyer, explained the situation, and asked what I needed to do to get this crazed Karen woman off my property. He said my best bet was to send her written notice that she was trespassing and had 30 days to vacate. So I drafted up a legal notice and personally delivered it to the shed when I knew Karen would be there. She was livid when I handed it to her. "This is unacceptable. I'm not going anywhere. I have legal rights to use this land," she once again claimed. I stayed calm and simply said, "You have 30 days to remove the shed and all of your belongings. If they are not gone by then, I will remove them myself." Well, those 30 days passed and no sign of Karen at the property. Perhaps she finally realized she didn't have a legal leg to stand on. I decided to go check out the lot and hopefully dismantle and remove that ugly shed. But when I arrived, not only was the shed still there, but now there were flower beds, a stone path, a bird bath, and a little fence around it. That scheming Karen had actually expanded her domain. That was the last straw. I was done playing around with this delusional woman. I called up my buddy Jim, who had a truck, and we went to the local hardware store and rented some sledgehammers and a chainsaw. It was time to dismantle this nonsense once and for all. We arrived at the lot and got straight to work. Jim took the sledgehammer to the exterior while I climbed on the roof and cut away at the structure with the chainsaw. Within an hour, the shed was nothing but a pile of rubble. We had just finished loading the last bit of debris into the truck when I heard tires screeching to a halt. Lo and behold, it was none other than Karen, and boy did she look mad. She jumped out of her SUV and came charging towards us like a raging bull. "What on earth do you think you're doing destroying my property? This is outrageous!" she screamed. I calmly replied, "As I notified you weeks ago, you were trespassing here illegally. I gave you a chance to remove your things, and you did not. So I was forced to dismantle this shed that you had no right to build in the first place." Karen's face turned red with anger. "You spiteful little cretin! How dare you destroy my beautiful shed and garden? I had over $10,000 worth of equipment and landscaping invested here. I'm calling the police right now and having you arrested for destruction of property. You won't get away with this." I had to laugh at her threats. "Go right ahead and call the police. I'll be happy to explain the situation to them and show them the deed proving this is my land. You'll be the one getting in trouble for trespassing and illegally building here." Karen angrily whipped out her cell phone and called 911, furiously pacing while she waited for them to arrive. It gave me satisfaction knowing she was in for a rude awakening once the police got here. After about 10 minutes, a squad car pulled up with lights flashing. 2 officers got out and Karen quickly ran up to them. "Officers, arrest this man immediately! He destroyed my shed and landscaping that I have every right to be here. This is an outrage," she bellowed dramatically. Trying to conceal my smile, I calmly approached the officers. "Officers, I'm the rightful owner of this vacant lot. I have the deed right here that proves it." I provided them the paperwork. This woman trespassed and built a shed without my permission. I gave her written notice to vacate 30 days ago and she refused, so I dismantled the shed. The officers carefully looked over the deed and then spoke with Karen again, who was still hysterical. After hearing both sides, they turned to me. "Thank you for the documentation, sir. It appears you own this land and made a reasonable effort to have her leave peacefully. She is the one at fault here for trespassing." Karen cut in, shrieking, "That's ridiculous. I have squatter's rights. He should be arrested." The officer put up his hand. "Ma'am, there is no evidence you have any legal rights to this property. The shed and other items were built illegally. You need to leave immediately." Karen stood there huffing and puffing, but realized she was beat. She had no case and no squatter's rights. She glared at me and the police. "Fine, but this isn't over. I'll get my revenge for what you've done to me," she threatened as she stormed off to her SUV. The officers reassured me I did the right thing and that she had no grounds for retaliation. Finally, I could relax, knowing my property was back under my full control. Justice had prevailed over that entitled Karen, who wrongly thought she could take what wasn't hers. I almost felt bad for her, realizing she just lost her precious shed and garden, but she brought it on herself by trying to squat on someone else's land. This was a lesson for her and any other Karens out there. Don't try and take what doesn't belong to you. The next one is a pro-revenge story. The setting: I worked in a moving company for a year before being laid off, along with half the crew as I was told, and during that time I would learn just how, I wouldn't say pompous, more like bossy, some clients tend to be. Military types fit this requirement most definitely, and understandably insufferable in others. The story: a client, call him entitled, wanted his stuff moved from a decent place in San Diego to a spot in the downtown area. A really nice apartment he picked out too. Now the policy the company had was that he pays for 2 hours worth of work when he books a move, to somewhat guarantee some amount of income, and after those 2 hours we charge him the hourly rate. As myself and 2 other guys are busying ourselves with wrapping all the furniture, loading up the cardboard moving boxes, and hauling all the stuff into the truck, I overheard Entitled talking to his wife, saying something like, "I'll only pay them for 2 hours for the total move. No big deal, sweetie." No big deal, I say to myself, and I take the time afterward to let the guys know it's most likely one of the 2-hour jobs. Nothing we haven't done before, but hey, mild annoyances at best. An hour passes and everything is loaded up in time. I write down the times, start the truck, and off we go. We don't charge them for the transportation of the move. But when we reach the destination and we find parking, Entitled seems to be unnerved. Here's why. The apartment unit is 7 stories high, overlooking much of the downtown area, near Petco Park Stadium. However, that's not the issue, it's the elevators. And said elevators are currently in use by the other tenants, with 45 minutes of the 2-hour job left to go, as I already told the boys to start unloading since we figured out how to work with this. Again, I overhear Entitled say something under his breath, something along the lines of, "How come they didn't reserve the elevators, damn it?" Not sure if it was towards me or the apartment tenant, but given that he's had that kind of attitude since we started, I was suspicious that those words were aimed at me and the crew. So what does he do? Usually, in this situation, most clients grumble and go along with it, but not Mr. Entitled. He starts shouting at us to hurry up, while myself and 2 other coworkers are busting our asses to unload the boxes and send them up the elevator. I'm tired. My lungs are burning from the strain of the job. My entire body is sweating pretty profusely. Plus, I've got the client pacing back and forth, looking like he's about to explode. Finally, Entitled snaps and starts an argument with me about the 2-hour mark passed and how he's not paying for the rest of the move, red-faced and screaming at my face. A-hole mode.x engaged. Formulating escape route.x in progress. Initially, I tried to calm him down, and just when the other 2 guys reappear from the elevator, I tell them to stop. I look to Entitled and ask amidst the screaming if he wants to continue the move past the 2-hour mark. He says yes. I then ask to clarify that he will not be paying us for the remainder of the move past the 2-hour mark, as it'll render our services complete, and he says yes. I also ask if he's sure, as we will not move anything into the apartment once our services are complete. He gives me this, "Are you kidding me?" face and says, "I paid you guys to move my stuff into my apartment." I hit back with, "Sir, you paid for 2 hours of our time." To which the man said, "I'm not going to pay you guys extra." And there it was, hook, line, and sinker. I radioed Central, let them know my times for the move, and also notified them of the completion of the contract. Once that was done, I gathered up the paperwork, had him fill it out, who then stormed off back up the elevator, most likely satisfied with his skill in negotiations. Once that was done, I told the boys to unload again, this time into the street. But Scribe, why would you throw out this man's furniture into the street? That's a pretty mean thing to do. Good question. I love these questions Reddit doesn't really ask, and here's why. Because now that he signed the papers releasing us from the contract, his things essentially are now his things, in our truck. There was nowhere else to put them except on the street. When he finally put 2 and 2 together, we had already unloaded the last of his things from the truck in about 15 minutes, which wasn't too bad. And another half hour and we would be done and over with. But, sadly, that wasn't the case. After arranging Entitled's boxes and some furniture neatly and in an organized fashion, strapping the moving equipment down and taking pictures of the back of the truck to prove we didn't take anything, I got onto the truck with my guys and drove back to Central, where we drank all the water we could find, ate through our lunches and then some, and clocked out. The next one is a petty revenge story. This occurred at a large chain sporting goods store on Black Friday. Before the sale began, shoppers had been lining up in front of tables covered with cloth in order to get the doorbuster items underneath. The bell sounded, and the cloth was lifted. I quickly, yet respectfully, rifled through a table of highly discounted yoga pants in various colors when I got shoved pretty aggressively from behind. I ignored it and continued what I was doing. Another shove, this time a screechy voice called out, "Make some room or move your ass!" Now keep in mind, the table is very large, so it's not like I was hoarding prime real estate all for myself. Karen just wanted in and didn't care who she had to run over to get it. Rather than make a scene, I wedged myself against another shopper, allowing her some room to slide closer. I had the last pair of size medium black pants on the table draped over my arm, looking through sizes of another color when I felt the pants get pulled off my arm. I looked up, and of course it was Karen, so I said, "Hey, those are mine," and grabbed onto them. She replied with an obnoxious smirk, "Not until you pay for them," and started pulling them, trying to get them out of my hands. At this point, I knew it was only going to go downhill, so rather than be on the 6 o'clock news for fighting on Black Friday, I cut my losses and decided to leave the table. My husband, who had been watching from a spot about 20 feet away, was half laughing as he saw me retreat empty-handed and defeated. "Cheer up," he said, and pushed a shopping cart toward me filled nearly to the top. "Here you go." Wouldn't you know, my amazing husband had commandeered the pushy woman's cart while she was busy digging through yoga pants. We smiled at each other and I happily rolled her cart and all her other Black Friday finds to the other end of the store, then turned her purse into customer service on my way out of the door. The next one is a malicious compliance story. As a young adult, I decided to move several hundred miles away on a whim without a new job lined up. Fortunately, the relatives I was living with knew a ton of people in the small town and were able to get me a job within a week at the local grocery store. I was to be a courtesy clerk, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. Immediately I made friends with coworkers, and some of the customers weren't too bad either. However, management was a different deal. Like the HR manager who would waste a customer's time telling them recipes for the items they have and holding up the line. She would also call me from the back of the store to bag 2 items and help the man barely older than me to his car, despite him protesting. There was also John, the general manager. John would be nice in groups, but if he got you alone, his true colors would show. He once berated me for having a 5 o'clock shadow even though I shaved right before work. My hair is dark and grows quickly. Sorry, dude. Can't help nature. After a few months, the night janitor, technically early morning, quit. John decided it would now be my job to polish the floors every morning. My previous job was at a movie theater, so working from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. was normal. Mornings? Not my jam. This would require me to be at work by 4 a.m., but I was told this would be for 2 months tops. I was even thrown a sweet $0.05 raise for my troubles. How could I decline? After a month, I asked John how the search for a replacement is going. He says probably 2 weeks and everything will be settled. After month 2, I ask again. John says the first person fell through and suggests that maybe I know someone who might be looking for a job. I assure him that is not the case. After the 3rd month, I was completely over it. Again, I approached John and explained that I cannot keep doing this much longer. He replies, "Not my problem, find someone else or a new job." This pissed me off, but I wasn't in the position to walk out right then. I figured I'd start applying anywhere I could. A couple of days later, possibly even the same day, my relative drags me with them to go look at new cars. While discussing prices and waiting for the sales manager to respond, my relative and the salesperson were just BSing, and I mentioned what John had told me about the job. The salesperson raised an eyebrow and walked away. Moments later, the sales manager approached and said they were looking for a detailer and asked if I was interested. It would be a regular schedule, no evenings, and higher than even my previous theater job, as a manager. While my relative was signing financing paperwork, I was filling out a new hire packet. I was to begin work on Tuesday of the next week. When I got home, I packed a bag and began driving to my hometown to visit friends. I knew I wouldn't have to work for about a week, because at midnight, I called the grocery store and told them I would not be returning to work. If you have any questions, please ask John. The next one is an entitled people story. Okay, as stated, I'm in a wheelchair and can't even stand, let alone do anything else. So anyway, on to my story. A couple of years ago, I had to send some Christmas cards because there were a few in a bigger envelope that had to be weighed rather than just posted in the outside box, to my family who live overseas. My hubby was going to do it, but I thought I'd do him a favor and take them myself. He had other things to do. So I get to the post office and take a look at the queue, inwardly thinking, "Oh yay, this is going to take a while, yippee." So I take my place in the queue and wait for my turn. The next thing I know, a lady walks in with a big box. Side note, she didn't seem like she was struggling under the weight of this box, it was just bulky. I'm getting close to my turn by this point, and instead of going to the back of the queue, she stands next to me. Not really thinking much of it, I just continue to wait to be called. Side note, the lady at the counter wasn't particularly paying attention to the queue, she was just calling the next person up. It gets to my turn, and the lady jumps in front of me and takes my turn. I let it go. You know, Christmas spirit and all that. She gets served. And as I move forward to take my turn, another lady who had stood at the side of me with lots of parcels while waiting for the previous lady to be served. Problems with the equipment arose, so it took a while. She tried to take my place again. I just said to the person behind me, "Excuse me, but am I invisible today? Can you see me? That's twice now I've been queue jumped?" He laughed and said, "No, love, I see you." The lady at the counter looked up at the queue at this point, and I'm guessing she heard my exchange with the guy. She shouted at the lady to join the queue properly. The lady huffed and said, "But I need to send this lot." Counter lady then replied, "So take your place like everyone else or you're free to leave." Parcel lady then tried, "But I was here first." The guy I spoke to then shot back with, "No, you weren't, she was," and pointed me out. Counter lady again gave her the option to wait or feel free to leave. Another side note, counter lady was the only one on the post office bit. By this time, the queue had snaked around the whole shop. Parcel lady then shot me the dirtiest look and called me something I won't repeat here. But let's just say it's not something you say to someone with disabilities in particular. And then went to queue up. On hearing this, counter lady says, "Get the heck out of my shop now, I'm not serving you." Not the word she used, but I'm keeping it PG. Parcel lady then says, "But the other place is miles away, it's not fair." Counter lady then shot back, "Don't care, not my problem, out, now! Or I'm calling the police." At this, parcel lady started crying and dropping her parcels. Not one person helped her pick them up, but she left, and I finally got to send off my parcel. Unfortunately, not the only experience I've had like this. With uncaring people, I've had bags to the face, people suddenly walking in front of my chair and getting bumped into when I couldn't stop quickly enough kind of thing. Another time, I went shopping with my hubby, and we parked in the disabled area. Legitimately, I've got the card, etc., to say it's legal. And my hubby went to get my chair out of the car for me. When seemingly out of nowhere, this guy comes screaming at him that he can't park there. My hubby ignored him, he's got the patience of a saint, that guy, and continued getting my chair. Side note, it was summer and a heat wave, so I had a strappy top on. By this point, the screaming guy had gotten level with the side I was on, so I opened the door and just leaned forward. Now, when I've got this type of top on, even if I didn't, there is no mistaking I'm disabled. I've got a very badly curved spine. Scoliosis, if you care to know. He was about to yell at me, but then I moved my hair so he could see my back. He went silent. I just looked at him, and even though I was trying not to laugh at the look on his face, I managed to keep a straight face and just said, "Disabled enough for you, sir? Usain Bolt has nothing on this guy." The speed he ran off. LOL. Didn't even get a sorry, but we got sore sides from laughing. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.